Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Coaching and Consulting Insights series on the Success Insight podcast. This series introduces you to coaches and consultants who work with leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals to create their best life and achieve and perform at their full potential. Our guest today is a returning guest, Dr. Laura Crawshaw. Dr. Crawshaw is the founder of the Boss Whispering Institute. Her professional expertise includes coaching abrasive leaders and training their superiors to intervene. Her target clients include executive coaches and managers of abrasive leaders, and I'm very proud to say that I am a member of the Boss Whispering Institute. I studied with Dr. Crawshaw, and I just love having her on the podcast to chat about the latest in the science of boss whispering and managing abrasive behavior. So Laura, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Howard. It's such a pleasure to be here. And we do go way back. You were one of the early believers, so thank you.
I remember when I was first introduced by a fellow coach during coach training, or maybe it was right after coach training, and they had shared, Howard, if you read this book, this is a really interesting book, because I had been commenting on an individual that I worked with. We used to call him Darth Vader. And he was just a really nasty person. And I think that was one of the reasons why I decided I needed to understand why this behavior was going on. Was I the cause of it, or were they just were they born and raised this way? And I'm very fortunate again to have met you, and it's been a pleasure. I love the journey that you have been on, and I get to be on because of this relationship. And so, first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. There's nothing more exciting than having exciting things to work on. It really makes life great.
Fantastic. And I know we're going to chat about something that you are working on is very exciting, and I'm excited about that, but we'll say that for a little bit. But one of the reasons that I had reached back out to you, because we had chatted last year, probably in the third quarter, fourth quarter last year, you had just launched your most recent book, Grow Your Spine and Manage Abrasive Leadership Behavior, a guide to those who manage bosses who bully.
Right.
And I have been working on projects as a coach. And one thing is I'm seeing that abrasive bosses are still out there. And it's not like it's a dwindling number. They're there.
As I
And
would say, Howard, for coaches, the market's very healthy, unfortunately. Go ahead.
very healthy. But something dawned on me the other day. So I have another podcast, and I don't know how much you know about it, and I hope everybody listens to it. It's called the Outdoor Adventure Series. And so I interview other folks who are very interested in the outdoors. So hiking, biking, whitewater rafting. And I know you have a lot of experience when you had you were living in Alaska. I think you could share more about what you were doing. And an individual who I know, I'm not going to say too much about them, but they had expressed as an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, that they had been bullied. Okay. And one of the responses from that was to this individual was that is the way they've always been.
That's the way he's always been. That's the way she's always been.
Yes. And so that spoke to me is that this person's behavior was being accepted, and we just had to live with it. And then this individual, perhaps as a cathartic resolution for themselves, wrote up a very long posting on a social media platform. And that's what got me thinking about how do solo entrepreneurs, like I am in some cases a solo entrepreneur. Okay, people call me, they want service. I try to do my best to deliver it, but we come across as entrepreneurs abrasive clients. And I was curious how the model could fit into that type of scenario where we don't have an HR organization, or we don't have our own manager who can go to bat for us, or
Hmm.
we risk losing the contract, the work, if we try to confront it. So I'm just kind of curious
Hmm.
what your take on that might be.
Right. So let me briefly define abrasive, which it means rubbing people the wrong way.
Mhm.
And abrasive behavior can range from very mild to very severe. Other terms that are such as bullying, harassment, aggression, etc. Those all fit under the umbrella of abrasive behavior. And what's happening, Howard, unfortunately, is I think we're really entering the age of the unruly, where we see more and more unruly, abrasive, unacceptable conduct in the
Mhm.
world and in people's
Oh, yeah.
communications, and that's being taken into the workplace. And as you point out, I think as solo entrepreneurs, we could certainly encounter that when potential clients contact us and seek assistance, and suddenly we're dealing with someone who's very aggressive with us, very demanding, may treat us rudely, etc. So how do we respond to that? Well, there's certainly the obvious response, which is just not do business with the person, right?
Mhm.
Just, I'm not going to deal with this. But I think
Mhm.
it puts you in a better position to understand what's underneath that abrasive behavior. Why are they getting aggressive with you? And I mean, people have theories, oh, just because they're evil or they're sadistic or they're mentally disordered or whatever. But I find it's more helpful to think about kind of the basic reason for that aggression.
Mhm.
And it has to do with the law of the jungle. You were right. I spent quite a lot of time in Alaska. I learned a lot of what I know from my encounters with grizzly bears. But basically, when any organism perceives a threat, okay, so when a marmot sees a grizzly bear, right,
Mhm.
what does it feel? Well, it feels fear. And why is it afraid? Because the grizzly bear might eat it. So threat generates anxiety or fear.
Mhm.
And then how can the marmot save itself from being attacked by the grizzly? And the two basic principles are fight or flight. Marmots
Mhm.
can flee, they can go down into their holes, or if they had little tiny weapons, they could fight back. So this concept, this is familiar to, I'm sure, all of your listeners, that when we perceive a threat, we feel fear, anxiety, and we use defensive mechanisms of fight or flight. Okay. Now, if you apply that, if you kind of look at somebody who's in fight mode with you, they're attacking you, why aren't you doing this for me? Why is they're being aggressive with you? If you start at the end of that, threat generates anxiety, generates defense, fight or flight. They're in fight mode. And
Mhm.
why are they in fight mode? They're in fight mode because they in some way feel threatened.
Mhm.
They in some way feel threatened and anxious, and they're going to defend themselves through fight. Now let me apply this to abrasive bosses.
Okay.
What we found in my many years of research with these individuals, the common belief is that they're all evil, psychopaths, narcissists who love to torment other people. And they look rather fearsome on the whole, kind of intimidating. But what I discovered and what other members of the Institute have also discovered is the reason these individuals are aggressive and abrasive is because they're insecure. They're
Mhm.
afraid. And what are they afraid of? They're afraid of being perceived to be incompetent. Now, that's true for bosses. So you'll see abrasive bosses who say, well, people aren't doing what I want. And if they're not doing what I need to have them do, then that jeopardizes my ability to be effective or to be competent. And so
Mhm.
I can't have that. And then they get aggressive. They start biting, barking, kicking, whatever term that goes on. Now, if you're a solo entrepreneur and you have a client who's getting abrasive with you, instead of just going to the, oh, they're being jerks, which you get to feel whatever you want, but let's take it beyond that. They're behaving that way because they're anxious about some kind of threat.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of, you may have promised to deliver a service to them,
Mhm.
and then they're anxious that the service isn't going to do what it needs to do, or it costs too much, or it's this, or it's that. And if you understand their aggression as an expression of their threat and anxiety, it gives you a choice to try and soothe the savage beast, to
Okay.
calm them down. So, well, you said that the trip was going to run starting at 8 a.m., but now you're telling me it's going to be at 9 a.m. or whatever. Well, let's talk about that. What are your concerns about starting an hour later? Let me explain why it does. And you as the entrepreneur see this anxious, you know,
Hmm.
beast, but not really a beast. But and you strive to soothe them, to calm them down. And while you're doing that, you have to monitor your own responses, and you have to be careful you don't get defensive, that
Hmm.
you don't get stirred up, triggered, and start getting aggressive with them. So in working with clients or customers or whatever, the key is if they're severely abrasive with you, I mean, if they're treating you just absolutely unacceptably, then I would say disassociate yourself, distance
Hmm.
yourself, cut them off. I will not be treated that way. And you have the good thing about being solo entrepreneurs, you can fire your clients, right?
Yeah.
But if it's not that, when you hear aggression, think of anxiety. It's being
Hmm.
driven by some kind of threat, some kind of fear. They're afraid they're not going to get what they want or need. They're afraid you don't understand them. They're afraid you might not be honest. Who knows? But get curious and find out what that's
Hmm.
about. So let me
Okay.
pause with that and see what your thoughts are.
No, what you are sharing is most definitely landing with me. And inside of as an entrepreneur, inside
Hmm.
of an organization, working with a client, customer, uh, I can see this definitely is just an extension of our model.
Hmm.
What happens, and maybe this is a little curveball,
That's okay.
if the the aggressiveness is not say not for it within a client organization
Hmm.
with a but it's maybe I'm a guide, you were a guide
Okay.
out in where we're catching trout in Wyoming, okay?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm a guide, there's another guide who
Hmm.
you are. I found out, by the way,
Hmm.
anglers, especially fly fishing, are very sensitive to other people encroaching
Of
on their
course.
favorite spot.
Get off of my turf.
Yeah. How do we deal with that type of scenario?
Okay, so we're both guides, correct?
We're both guides,
Hmm.
and I'm being incredibly abrasive for you. Get away from my area. This is
Hmm.
my little patch of water,
Hmm.
and you can't bring
Yeah.
yourself or your clients
Get
here.
your fishing pole out of my right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at that. That person feels threatened. What is the threat?
Yes.
That they're not going to catch their fish, right? And their anxiety level goes up. And instead of going into flight mode and just saying nothing about it, oh no, they go into fight mode. They start barking at you, get out of
Right.
my section of the river or whatever.
Right.
Well, so if you understand what's going on there, you may not magically be able to change their behavior, but the goal, you'd either decide, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. I
Hmm.
refuse to be treated this way. And you can quit, or you can
Hmm.
go to the contractor and say, I'm not going on any more of his trips. So one is you can kind of go into flight mode, which is a reasonable adaptation. But another adaptation is maybe perhaps not in the moment, but to try and soothe this individual's anxiety. So
Right.
what might that look like? Well, back at the campfire, that night you say, "Hey Bob, I noticed you really thought I was intruding into your territory, and you were kind of yelling, from my perspective, you're sort of barking at me and yelling at me. That didn't look so good in front of our clients or whatever. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to figure out, if you see that again, if you feel that I'm in your turf,
Hmm.
could we have a signal for that? Okay.
Hmm.
That you would say, hey, whatever, some magic phrase, and let's work it through here
Hmm.
and just signal me, and then I will back off. Okay. So this is the third option, because our basic defenses are fight or flight when we're
Right.
threatened. There's a third option, and that's called working through.
Right.
And because we humans have bigger brains, we're not just relegated to using our primitive instinctual fight or flight reactions. So
Hmm.
this guy's barking at you. He's being controlling. He's being rude. He's acting like the river is his. Now, I could get into a big fight with him, which is not terribly productive with our fishing clients there.
Right.
But instead, and again, I could just say I don't want to work with him again. But the third option would be to get him calmed down and give him a way to feel less anxious and aggressive by saying, "Hey, I don't want to get in your territory. Don't worry. Let me reassure you. Let's use the language that way." And many times that works. They go, "Well, good. Okay. All right, I'll do that. But don't get near my fish."
All right. So
That's
if I
called
can't
working the problem through instead
work
of
in the,
going into fight or flight mode.
I love it, and it is a, as a very viable option. I wonder if sometimes
Fine.
individuals
Go ahead.
that they aren't comfortable with that yet, and they don't know. It's not raised to a point of awareness that I can have a conversation. So, I, as a guide, if someone is being abrasive to me or
Yeah.
I'm being abrasive to them, they're we're not ready to have that conversation because we don't know how to do it.
Right. And if you're the bigger person and you see that person's being kind of infantile and regressed and barking and throwing their little tantrum and everything, you can be the bigger and more mature person if you choose, and try and go over and reassure them, and I don't mean to get in your territory, and I didn't know I was, and so let's have
Mhm.
a signal because I certainly don't want to. Now in a way that's manipulating them, right?
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah.
manipulating them for your own good.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't want to. And in a way I think it has a subtle effect of sort of shaming the person because they kind of want to get into a big snit with you, right?
Mhm.
Oh, but no, if you just stay really calm, you take the high road and you say, "Hey, I didn't mean to offend, and let's have a signal between us so that I can be sure that I don't encroach on your territory." And I think sometimes they may feel a little ashamed that they did bark, that they did bite.
It would be interesting to find out what had been the trigger or what happened afterwards. Did they
Hmm.
feel that way? In this line of business, these guides depend on customers, repeat
Yeah,
business, referrals. They oftentimes depend on um, the local guide shop to assign
right.
guests
They have to have
to.
good relationships
Yeah.
to maintain the business. And let me tell you, if you're taking people, guiding people on fishing trips, and the guides are at war with each other, that does not create a pleasant experience, and it
No.
reverberates through the whole thing. So the owner of that company who's hiring these guides also needs to be aware of, look, Bob, I'm getting complaints about Bob, and people are trying to soothe Bob and work with him, but it keeps coming up. And that's when the employer needs to learn how to manage abrasive workplace behavior and how to intervene with Bob and say to Bob, can't have that here, can't have you behaving, having that kind of behavior here. So you got to shape up, or else we'd like to offer you help in the form of coaching, but it cannot continue. And that's kind of the campaign I'm on, which is getting employers to intervene with their abrasive leaders.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that, Laura, is the perfect segue to the other uh, topic I would love to
Hmm.
discuss. And this
Hmm.
relates to why you are so busy these days. And you're working on a project that is
Hmm.
near and dear to my heart. And I'm
Hmm.
excited to be able to share that with listeners and to future clients. But
Yeah.
can you share a little bit more about this
Sure.
project?
Sure. I'll take you back to my professional journey, way back to my early, but way back when I was working in
Okay.
Alaska, and I encountered workplace bullying for the first time. And I was working in an EAP, and someone came in and said their boss was being terrible to them, and they were angry at their boss. And I said, "How angry?" And they said, "I'm thinking of killing him." And they
Oh,
had a gun in the truck. That was my first encounter with workplace bullying way back in the late 80s. Okay, so that person said they'd also told their company about the boss's bad behavior. Company had done nothing. So this
mhm,
drove two questions for my entire career. One is, why would a boss treat their employee badly?
mhm,
Why? And I found the answer to that. And that's in my first book, Taming the Abrasive Manager. And the reason they get aggressive, as I said earlier in the podcast, is they're insecure,
mhm.
and they feel threatened and the threat of incompetence, and so they get aggressive and start controlling. But the second question was, why don't the employers do anything about it? And I don't know how many of your audience have been in an organization where people were behaving badly and the employer, those above, did nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
what I discovered is it's not because they're evil employers on the whole. It's
Mm-hmm.
because they, first of all, they don't know what to do. And they're
Mm-hmm.
afraid if they talk to Bob about his conduct that they'll lose Bob. He'll quit. He's really valuable, or Bob will retaliate or whatever. And so this second phase that I'm in is now my second book, which you referenced, and thank you, called Grow Your Spine and Manage Abrasive Leadership Behavior. It's even got a spine on the book, but they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't fit a spine on the spine. Go figure.
Go
Anyway,
figure that. It
but
needs to be a bigger book.
it's a very small book intentionally because managers don't have a lot of time to read. But now I'm putting the finishing touches on the training for managers called Manage Abrasive Workplace Behavior with Backbone.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it helps manage. Nobody trains us to do this as managers. They train us maybe to manage performance, but not conduct. And so we're putting here at the Institute, putting the final pieces on the 5-hour training, and any Institute member is free to take that training and provide it to employers. And it's really impactful. It's an enjoyable training, but it helps them grow their spines and feel confident about calmly managing unacceptable behavior. So, yep.
Excellent. And this is 5 hours
Yeah.
training. Just
And it,
based on your professional experience, is this
mhm.
best? Is this a half? It could be delivered in a half a day, a whole
Sure.
day.
Sure, it could
Uh,
be 2 half days, two and a
okay.
half hours each, or a full day with a lunch break thrown in. And it can be done virtually, or it
Okay.
can be done in person by the trainer. So yeah, so any members of our institute are going to be offering that training to employers because we are in the age of the unruly, and I think managers are going to be confronted with more and more abrasive behavior, also known as unacceptable conduct.
Right. And I love it, and I'm very excited to be able to share that
Yes,
with this listening community on the podcast, but also with my network,
yes.
uh, and because the behavior is still out there, and it also dawns on me too, as abrasive behavior can be occurring also in virtual environments
Oh,
on,
yes.
and it hasn't changed. It's still there.
And the other conclusion I've come to really is we can also use the term for bullying for abrasive behavior, and it causes so much suffering. It
Mhm.
causes suffering in the targets, the coworkers, the organization pays a price for it or whatever. And the question is, who can stop that suffering?
Mhm.
And I have an answer to that question. The only people who can stop that suffering are those who have authority over the abrasive leader.
Right.
Laws won't stop it. Policies won't stop it. Management trainings won't stop it. Targets can't stop it. Bystanders can't stop it. HR can't stop it because they don't have authority over the abrasive leader. Only those who have the authority to manage performance and conduct. And so that's why I'm really focusing and wanting leaders to understand that it's their duty and their responsibility to provide psychological safety for all
Mhm.
employees, and part of that is managing conduct.
Mhm. And it is the manager's responsibility,
Yeah,
and also their managers and their directors and
right.
their
To support them
VPs
in doing
to
it. Yeah,
support them. Scott, that
right.
support has to be throughout. And even in some of the instances that I've come across recently, when that's not there,
Yeah,
the abrasive behavior
right.
persists.
The book talks about the management backbone, and the first
Right.
vertebra in that management backbone in the spine is that I'm leaning over to read it. I don't trust my memory. I
Okay.
am the guardian of my organization's mission and the employees who work to fulfill it.
Right.
So as a manager, I'm the guardian of this fly fishing company. The mission is to provide the best fly fishing experience, but I'm also guardian of the employees who work to fulfill that mission. And I think helping managers understand their role as a guardian, not as just someone who comes in and does the work and produces the widgets or assigns tasks, but you're the guardian of the mission of your organization and the employees who work to fulfill it. So that's the first vertebra in the spine
I love
that
it.
needs to be grown.
Most definitely that. Well, Laura, I have accomplished what I set out to accomplish by having you as my guest again on the podcast. Lots of great information, and we're able to
Thank you.
and just I love the reflection and the education on this little nuanced of the entrepreneur and also
Hmm.
the somebody two guides out in the middle of a nice we should be embracing being outdoors and the
Hmm.
cathartic nature of just fly fishing.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be, well, that's a whole other story, but
That's a
I
whole
just,
other story, but I wasn't fly fishing, but I fished on rivers where there's a grizzly right down at the bend there. And we were kind of competing for the resource, but we worked it through. No
yes.
abrasive behavior.
Yes, I'm going to have to share the books and the interviews that I've done with folks they study bears and fly fishing
Yeah,
and that competition. So very interesting. But again, thank you for spending your precious time
it's a
with me.
delight. I
Yeah,
so enjoy talking with you.
excellent. And I know our audience is going to truly appreciate what you've shared today. And of course, we're going to provide the backlinks to the book. Also, for our listeners, there will ultimately be a link in the show notes and on my website,
Hmm.
foxcoaching.com,
Hmm.
for the offer of delivering this training
Hmm.
for within your organization. But more to come on that. But I really
Within
appreciate
our organization, Howard, you're a member of the Institute. It's our
within
organization. Yeah,
I
right.
sit
Right.
corrected.
Right.
So this is a part of the Boss Whispering Institute's offering as
Yes.
one of the members, and I'm excited to be able to deliver that.
Good.
Laura, again, thank you so much for spending time, and we will provide backlinks, obviously, to
Okay.
the books and to the Boss Whispering Institute. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, stay in the line. We're going to do a real quick close, and then you and I can have a final chat, okay?
Okay.
Perfect. All right, folks, we've just been chatting once again with Dr. Laura Crawshaw, founder of the Boss Whispering Institute. Today we had an opportunity to talk about a scenario that I have come across recently, which was, how do we deal with abrasive individuals, say, from an entrepreneurial perspective, when we have a client or a customer and we're just the solo entrepreneur delivering the service. We extended that out to perhaps some individuals. They are truly solo entrepreneurs because they work by themselves with their clients out in nature, and now they're confronted perhaps with others who are perhaps anxious and really are feeling threatened. How do we deal with that type of scenario as well? Hope you got some great insights from how Laura kind of characterized what it looks like and how you can potentially uh, bring that type of issue to a resolution. And we also learned about Laura's latest project, the 5-hour course, Managing Abrasive Behavior with Backbone, with, let me repeat that, her 5-hour course, Manage Abrasive Behavior with Backbone. And I'm very excited to be able to, with the Boss Whispering Institute, be able to offer that to, anybody out there that wants to learn about this wonderful technique and method for doing our part to manage abrasive behavior in the workplace. Okay, so again, we're going to provide all the backlinks to the Boss Whispering Institute, Dr. Crawshaw's books. As for us, you can find this episode of the Coaching and Consulting Insight series on Success Insight Podcast on our website, successinsightpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, as all of our episodes are now up on YouTube. This video of the episode will be there as well. We are on Instagram and also wherever you listen to your podcast. So we do appreciate liking us, sharing the episodes, commenting, sharing with your friends. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. And we look forward to again, having you join us wherever you listen to your educational, informative content. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.